Episode 30. Episode 30. Episode 30 of Liam Small, Abridges, A History of Newfoundland by D.W. Prowse, 15 to 20 pages at a time, every day or every other day until the bars reopen, or every couple days, depending on how I'm feeling about it at the time. And yesterday I just wasn't feeling it either. I am slowly crumbling, but that's okay, because we've only got a couple more episodes left as we wind down, or we arrive at, you know, where this history ends at, like 125 years ago. But nevertheless, we're getting near the end. So, without any further ado, thank you guys for tuning back in. We just finished the last installment talking about the railway, which is cool. So we were talking about the railways, and in today's episode, we're going to start in the year 1882. Buckle up, everybody. It's going to be riveting shit. Okay, so in 1882, it was a good year, apparently. The island initiated a couple of more big projects outside of the railways. There was the dry dock at Riverhead, and then there was the rope walk, which they just called it the rope walk, which I can only assume was probably over by Rope Walk Lane somewhere. Okay, so the dock, they were both key things to be built projects because they provided a lot of jobs. They were also like resource kind of creators, so like they would, they could work on the boats. Anyway, it kept a lot of money inside the province, and we didn't have to buy stuff and have things serviced elsewhere. Now we had the ability to do a lot more of it in-house, which is cool. It says the most important social industry in St. John's is the rope walk. So there's the dry dock, was one thing, and then the rope walk it talks about for a second. As a great fishing country, Newfoundland uses an enormous amount of lines, twines, netting, cordage, and cables. Until quite recently, all these articles were imported principally from the west of England, and as well some in New England in the States. The Colonial Cordage Company was founded, and then we started doing that shit ourselves. Aided by local and foreign capital, some guy inaugurated a work which gives employment to a large number of people and circulates money in the colony. The goods turned out that they were fantastic. Apparently they were of the finest quality, so I'm told by our pal DW. Instead of importing from abroad, we can make it out here. It was great for us, yada, yada, yada. On page 511 here. Okay, so that's pretty much all we talked about that. Just a note here, we built some shit. Then, the events of I'll just read right from the old bookie wook here. The events of the next succeeding years from 1883 forwards are fresh in the memories of all, and it is not needful to dwell with minute particularity over circumstances which with all Newfoundland readers are familiar. Well, 125 years after the fact, we're not so caught up on what was going on. So I guess he doesn't get into so much detail, which I don't know why. If you're writing a history book, history keeps going. So just stay filled in. Anyway, he says one unpleasant subject I would like to pass over the virulence, mendacity, and misinterpretation with which the promoters of the railway and the graving dock were assailed. These most monstrous fictions were invented to set the people against these new enterprises, being the railroad and stuff. So there were people being sneaky, saying a bunch of shit that was getting people not on board with the railway type shit. This resulted in a very serious disturbance. In 1881, the inhabitants of the south shore of Conception Bay, believing that In 1881, the inhabitants of the South Shore of Conception Bay, believing that all unutterable evils would happen to them if the line went through their lands. This is a train we're talking about. If the train went through their lands, so when they did, they stoned the engineers, took away their instruments, and drove them from their work. They stoned them. And the inspector of police, Mr. Carty, and the police magistrate, with only 11 men, were left to contend with the mad, excited crowd of about 500 men and women armed with guns and every variety of weapon. Against a train. The arrest of the ringleader at the point of the bayonet and the firm action of the police authorities eventually restored order. All this unseemly, dangerous disturbance was directly caused by the unscrupulous fabrication of falsehoods to stir up these poor, ignorant people to oppose the railway. For 5 days, the whole population from Topsail to Indian Pond were in an insane state of excitement. Though it was the busiest time of the year, they never did a stroke of work. All day long, they watched the engineers, And they formed a small... Oh, yeah, they watched the engineers and a small posse of police and followed them from place to place. From Topsail to Indian Pond, the whole population believed the advent of this terrible monster, the railway, meant their ruin. So, that was hilarious. Being afraid that putting a train in the town... It's not like you're bringing people from, Mars. You're bringing people from St. John's to Harbor Grace. What is the fucking worst thing that could happen? Weird. That's... Yeah, cool. So that's reasonable. That's a good normal thing to do. There was a little bit of a legitimate objection to the railway though, because people genuinely thought it might be impractical because of our long winters, and if the winters are really bad and the railway doesn't work, it doesn't then become like a waste of money. But it didn't. They worked fine. They said they figured even in worse conditions, like the train got stuck, they could have it out in like a couple hours. So apparently the train was fine. Really, no big deal. Anyway, so it didn't get stuck. It worked okay. The year 1883 is distinguished for the painful episode of the Harbor Grace riot. It was not only a most regrettable incident, owing to the deplorable loss of life, but also for the dire feelings of revenge and hatred that it called forth. 3 men were killed belonging to the Orange Procession, and 1 on the Catholic side, so I guess there was Catholic Protestant stuff going on. The police authority at Harbor Grace had full warning, yet no precautions were taken to keep the rival factions apart, and this fatal error produced the most disastrous effects, both social and political. Of course, now we've got some fighting between the different religious sects, which happens a lot. Gonna keep this thing lit here. Okay, now on to politics, because we give a fuck. 1885 got things shuffled up a little bit. We had Premier Whiteway, he had 2 terms in office. He resigned, and then the Thorburn Administration Party was formed. So, yeah, they formed a new political party, and Thorburn ends up taking the seat. It was intended to be the first genuine Protestant government, worked on sound commercial principles, so they were more economically based. It was to inaugurate a new reign of moderate progress, economy, and no amalgamation. It ended by building the expensive railway to Placentia and the Thorburn Turnpike Road to Broadcove, the best constructed and most costly road in the colony. Its stern principles of no amalgamation with Catholics soon died away. Probably for the best. Better to have everybody get along. The Thorburn administration will ever be memorable for their bold policy in the inauguration of the Bate Act and the construction of the Placentia Railway. And the inception of the new line to Halls Bay. They added one fine touch of... Oh, yeah, this is another one of DW's fine touch of humor. Which this is just a lie that they told. They added one fine touch of humor to the annals of our constitutional history. The construction of the Placentia Railway under the disguise of it being a road. One member of the executive, when attacked in the Legislative Council on this subject, solemnly declared that he was not aware that the government were in the process of building a railway. And when he found out that the so-called road was the veritable Placentia Railway, he resigned. To some of the stern, unbending Tories of Water Street, the railway was the unclean thing, hence the thin disguise. It was altogether too transparent to deceive the public. That is hilarious, DW. My God. Someone tell this man a fucking joke, for God's sakes. Moving right along to the next thing, we also, at this time, we sit down and negotiate with the French again, which I'm not any more thrilled about than you are. So, the convention between England and France made in 1884 relative to the French fishery rights in Newfoundland was submitted to the Newfoundland government in 1884. We're still talking about French fishing rights. The negotiations resulted in the joint committee of the House of Assembly and the Council absolutely refusing to ratify the Ford Penal Convention unless the French would agree to withdraw or modify their bounties. So we weren't digging their terms. Currently, the committee drafted and both houses had passed the first Bate Act of 1886. In substance, it empowered the executive to prohibit the capture in our waters for exportation or sale of bait fish, except under special license issued by the Receiver General under the authority of the Governor of Council. Well, basically, it put a monopoly on like the bait fishery here, which if you're going to, we touched on it a few episodes ago, I think, but we needed the bait fishery around the southern not the southern shore, like the Grand Banks and stuff, more around Buren. God damn it. We needed the bait fishery because that's how you get a lot of the deep sea fishing done, and our plan was to put the Bait Act in so that the French couldn't come in and get their own bait. We charge them a shit ton for the bait, and then they slowly start to not fish here so much. It's kind of a workaround way of getting rid of them, as far as I can tell. If carried out officially, it would stop all the supply of bait to the French from our south coast. The French were made every effort to induce this. So, of course, the French weren't on board with this, and so go our squabbles. Historically speaking, if I know anything about our dealings with the French, we'll probably come off the negotiating table with half of our fishing rights gone, and we'll give them back St. Pierre for fun. Maybe Labrador too. Who knows? What else? Okay, so yeah, these next couple pages here. I mean, this is just like a direct quote, like what the French wrote back, and they were like, "Come on, guys," and then the House in England were like, "Yeah, but you know," and then so there was a bit of that for a little while, and I'm just not reading it. Where are we to, boys? Where are we to? Next down the table. Okay. Oh, this is funny. And in the end of the Bait Act thing, the British government, having most reluctantly assented to the Bait Act, made it a condition that the act should not be put into force until the following spring, 1888. I'm over it. So yeah, so we're gonna put the Bait Act into place. That should help. I think it does end up driving the French away. I think this time we actually may have pulled one over on them. The year 1887 will be memorable for the jubilee of our gracious sovereign Queen Victoria. The occasion called out the grand exhibition of loyalty in the vast empire, whose drumbeat now encircles the world. In St. John's, an impressive jubilee service was held at the Anglican Cathedral of St. John the Baptist. Yay! All hail the Queen. The subsequent history of the important question of the Bait Act is well known to Newfoundland readers. This is where I fucking knew this was going to happen. I didn't call it, but I knew it. I knew at some point when we got to the end of this, I fucking knew that D.W. Prowse was going to insert himself into this book. There was no way that a judge, was going to not bring it up. And right here, the subsequent history of this important question of the Bait Act is well known to Newfoundland. I was requested by the Thorburn government to put the action into operation. So it's kind of a big task, actually. In March 1888, I found myself one morning suddenly transformed from a peaceful district judge into the commander of a fleet. The French called me Bombard Admiral, and our tugs the Ironclads. We had very great difficulty in getting free from the ice. So all of a sudden, he just talks about having inserted, like, he was just like, I was set to put through this law, and he immediately launches into a story about how the French had a nickname for him on the ocean. Like, he jumped that story pretty fucking quick. Couldn't wait to get that one out. We have very great difficulty in getting free from the ice. Anyway, I don't know why, he just literally just starts talking about him on a boat. So he got stuck on the ice once and the French saw it. I don't know. Anyway, in the year, 1892. Here we go. The year 1892 will ever be memorable in the colony as a period of calamity, beginning with the great disaster in Trinity Bay and followed by the fire in July. Did I just tell myself to read these pages? Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to read a little bit about 1892. Because 1892 sucked so badly that we named a fucking beer after it, okay? It's not a bad beer either. I would. I should have. Oh, man, I totally should have. Anyway, I should have bought some for this. Next time, gadget. The year 1892 will be remembered as in January, all the English-speaking world mourned for the death of the Duke of Clarence. Sincere and widespread sympathy was felt for the bereaved prince. Okay, we're just talking about dead royals here, the Dutch princess or whatever. In February occurred one of those terrible calamities, loss of human life, which vividly impressed us with terrible dangers to which our hardy fishermen who earn their bread upon the waters and the daily and hourly are exposed. Saturday the 28th of February, 1892 is a dark day in the annals of Trinity, the day to be ever remembered and mourned. The morning sun ushered in a lovely dawn. Oh god, this is gonna be fucking painful. The sky was clear, a soft, bright, balmy air blew on the sea. Oh my fuck. From Trinity and every other harbour adjacent, boats were out early dawn. Lots of boats on the go from Trinity Ship Cove, Trouty, English Harbour, Salmon Cove, and other small places. The daring ice hunters set off with high hopes. They were going sealing for the day, okay? So, as right off the bat, you can tell this is probably a fucking sealing disaster. On this eventful day, seals were few and scattered. In the fierce excitement of the chase, many went far out into the bay, heedless of the oncoming tempest. Storm on the way. A few of the older fishermen, especially those from Trinity, more weary and probably less vigorous, noticed the first signs of the storm, and therefore, before the icy blast came down with full force, they were under the lee of the land and could row in. 250 men went out that day. The majority got safe to land. Tremendous struggle for their lives. The rest of the unfortunate fishermen, in spite of their heroic exertions, were finally overpowered with strong arms. They rowed for their lives, but the freezing, icy tornadoes swept down upon them and paralyzed their efforts. Icy tornado. Okay. That sucks. They had done all that men could do against the blizzard. They fought with gale. Anyway, they got fucked. 13 fishermen were found frozen to death in their punts. 11 others were driven up the bay and perished in that dark, cold night. The hardships that were endured, the sufferings of the poor fellows that were saved, the agony of suspense for the dear ones on shore, the heroism of those poor humble souls in their hour of agony is known only to the almighty power that rules the raging of the sea. Oh my god, okay, that sucks, but tone it back a little bit. Okay, a gallant crew from Heart's Delight saved 16 men on the ice. A generous Captain Fallow put out to the schooners. Anyway, yeah, that's one. That was fucking January. And then he says, in the course of history, I have often had to chronicle the ravage. In the course of this history, not just history. In the course of just our history alone, even DW is like, in the course of our history, I have often had to chronicle the ravages of fire. Thrice our capital has been destroyed by the devouring flame. The conflagration, there's that word again, of the 8th and 9th of July in 1892 far exceeded all former calamities and in suddenness and in the immense value of the property destroyed. The Great Fire of 1846 began with the upsetting of a glue pot in the shop of Hamlin, the cabinet maker. Yeah. Still, the Greater Fire of July 1892 commenced in a stable and was in all probability caused by the spark with some careless labourer's pipe. Commencing on a fine summer's evening, fanned by a high wind, the fire burnt all through the night, and in the bright dawn of that ever-memorable 9th of July, where 10,000 people found themselves homeless. A forest of chimneys and heaps of ashes marking where the living before had stood one of the busiest and most flourishing towns in the maritime provinces. Lest I should be accused of prejudice, I prefer giving an account of the disaster from another pen. Nearly all the following description is taken from the St. John's Evening Herald on the 10th of September, 1892. And I think with that takes us to just right before page 225. So I am going to stop there and pick up tomorrow with the St. John's, the Evening Herald's recounting of the Great Fire of 1892. It's a couple pages. So I think I'm just going to read that in its entirety because we have the Great Fire of 1892, my friends, and then I think in the next step, so we have two left. I get the Fire of 1892 and the fucking conclusion. I am chomping at the bit to finish up this. I know it looks like there's a lot of book left, a lot of appendages, and then like I said, I am going to come back and hit you guys with a little bit, like a special bonus thing on St. Pierre. I'm going to do one on Labrador. I might do one about the railways and the telegraphs and stuff as well, so we will see. So this concludes episode 30. A little bit of a shorter one today, you guys, but that's okay. Because, whatever. Thank you for sticking with me as far as you have. This has been episode 30 of Liam Small Abridges A History of Newfoundland by D.W. Prowse. 15 to 20 pages every day or every other day until the bars reopen, if they reopen, if anything reopens. Let's just worry about getting to phase 4, you guys. I got nothing to say. I don't wash your friggin' hands. I know we said that a whole bunch like a month and a half ago, but I know, admittedly, I've slacked off on it a little bit. I had to kick myself to remind myself to to do these things. So this is my reminder to you. And also drop your shoulders and straighten your posture and breathe. Go have a glass of water. It's good for you. I'm going to finish my coffee at 2 a.m. See you tomorrow. Great fire.